Важко. And friends, these are incredibly difficult days for the Ukrainian-Canadian community. You see, our grandparents, our parents, and many of us, we never gave up on that, what seemed to be impossible dream of Ukrainian independence and statehood. And when others scoffed, we stood and demonstrated in front of the Soviet embassy, in front of the Soviet consulate here in Toronto. And how incredible, how joyous were those days 20 years ago when we celebrated that dream of independence. An independent Ukraine achieved through a peaceful revolution where not a single bullet was fired, not a life lost. And how difficult it is today for us to gather instead of in celebration, but to once again demonstrate, and this time in front of the Ukrainian consulate. Friends, today we heard references to what justice looks like in Mr. Yanukovych's Ukraine. Canada invested heavily in programs to make sure that Ukraine, in this very difficult post-Soviet transition, would have an independent judiciary. And we saw how difficult that transformation was. Earlier today, one of the speakers noted that Ukraine's justice system was selective. Well, today we saw a transformation. Ukraine's justice system is no longer selective. It's become a tool of oppression. The courts, the judiciary, are not a shield to protect the people of Ukraine. They've become a weapon against the aspirations and dreams of the Ukrainian people. And we call upon the Canadian government. The Canadian government has stood shoulder to shoulder with the Ukrainian Canadian community and with all those Ukrainians that dreamed of a democratic, independent, socially just Ukraine. We stood shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine when Ukraine declared her independence. We stood shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine during the Orange Revolution. And at that time, in 2004, a motion was introduced in the House of Commons that condemned President Kuchma and his regime at that time for their anti-democratic moves. And it was very specific in its wording. Not only did it condemn, it called for targeted sanctions against President Kuchma, his family, and his government cronies. And today, we call upon the Canadian government. It's well past the point for mere statements in the House of Commons. If in 2004, the House of Commons could unanimously pass a motion not only condemning, but expressing the will of Parliament for targeted sanctions, today, in a situation of majority government, we expect no less of Prime Minister Harper. We expect the Prime Minister to make a clear, unequivocal statement, not only condemning this anti-democratic Yanukovych regime, but as in other cases where we've seen that dictators and potential dictators, diplomatic nicety and diplomatic words don't have an impact. But we have seen that they do pay attention. when we call for clear sanctions, and not sanctions that would hurt the people of Ukraine or hurt the futures of their children. Targeted sanctions against the president, his family, and the government of oligarchs that run his regime. Canadian community. During the darkest days of the evil empire, our grandparents, our parents, and many of us here did not give up hope. Today, when Ukraine is once again suffering a dark chapter in her history, we cannot give up hope. We will not give up hope, because in our veins, it's not the blood of Kripake, it's the blood of Kozake that coursed through our veins. Slava Ukraini!
Янукович є бандит! Янукович є бандит!
Тут не тише наразі ще Януковича заграти, але прочитаю statement by Liberal leader Bob Ray on the sentencing of former Ukrainian Prime Minister Yulia Tymoshenko. Liberal leader Bob Ray made the following statement. The Liberal Party of Canada is disappointed in today's harsh verdict against Ms. Tymoshenko and joins the international community in condemning this politically motivated act. The lack of an independent judiciary and due process in the case against Ms. Tymoshenko threatens Ukraine's evolving democracy and threatens Ukraine's relationships with international partners. There is no place in a democracy for political retribution or the targeted removal of political opponents. The Honorable Bob Ray.
Thank you. Thank you for it.
Over the next week and a half, please sign up at the end of the demonstration, and we've got a volunteer form where you can do that. So what we'd like to do right now is have our raffle for the t-shirts. So maybe I'll ask Chris to come up and help me with this. Yes. Just one. You have to, hang on. Just one.
By the way, everybody has
The second winner is 767585. I'll repeat. Is 767608. 767608.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true
true nor strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Ще вмерла Україна, ні слава, ні воля. Ще нам, браття молоді, усміхнеться доля. Згинуть наші вороженьки, як роса на сонці. Запануєм і ми, браття, у своїй сторонці. Душу тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття з козацького роду. Душу тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття з козацького роду.
Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
I'd like to thank all